All right, hi guys. Today I'm going to actually talk about building desktop apps with web tech to use your existing skill set to potentially go after a market that you may not have ever considered within your grasp. So a little bit about me. As Steve said, I'm a Microsoft developer evangelist, a new Microsoft developer evangelist. I've been with Microsoft 2.5 months. A little bit? Yeah, something like that. Before that, I was a consultant here in town, a long-time web developer, local meetup organizer. I helped with this one and a few other ones. Love JavaScript. You can find me on Twitter at ATXRyan. So, first question. Why would you want to build a desktop app instead of a web application? Most likely for the same reasons that you want for a mobile app, instead of running it in the browser. Ultimately, the pinned application or pinned website experience I find is not as immersive. It's not as engaging for users as the installed app is. And there's some other reasons why you want to go down that path as well. But for instance, you take like on iOS, Facebook, theirs is a JavaScript application, but it's actually an installable app. Same thing with like LinkedIn. And they could have just gotten users to pin that same experience to the start screen, but that's not. You're not going to get the same engagement from your users in that way. Also, you can get this in HTML5 in the browser as well, but it's oftentimes much easier to do drag and drop. You can have a truly offline experience. You have notifications within the OS. This can be Growl on OS X or Toast on new Windows 8 OS. You have access to the file system, and you can do app-to-app interaction, and I'll go into this a little bit more. You can also do backgrounding, which is very key if you're doing some data-intensive type of applications or other stuff. Depending on how you implement it or which package you use, you may also be able to do OS search. So this is something that can help a lot as well to really get that integrated feel to your application. But all of that aside, the real reason that you probably want to do a desktop app versus a web application is reach. I think Apple proved the model of the App Store, or proved out that model very well. They make it easier for users to discover, purchase, and download your product, and so you can monetize it, obviously. With Windows 8, there will be hundreds of millions of users who will be newly introduced to the App Store model. And again, I think Apple and Google and Amazon have proven that out, and now there's going to be even more users who want to go after that. So essentially, you have big boys taking care of your distribution problems, your marketing, and all the other stuff. Ratings, reviews, all that stuff is taken care of for you for this model. Granted, they get a small cut, 30%, but I think in the end, it works out well. So, are there any examples of existing apps? Yes. I will show the tweet deck on OS X in a bit when I switch to machines. Because today I actually sent out a tweet that I was looking for other popular OS X apps that are developed in HTML and JavaScript, and I couldn't find any. No one was able to come back to me on one. And I think one thing, a friend of mine, Sue, asked me to define an app, what makes it different than a website. So there's still this thing. Hopefully I will, at the end of this presentation, this talk, you'll want to go out and build a web app and fill in this gap here. There are obviously lots of Adobe Air apps we see here, but what I was actually looking for were Cocoa apps that you have essentially a UI web view or something that was cross-compiled from, let's say, Titanium or something like that. And I couldn't really find a good example, so if anyone has any, does anyone know of one besides TweetDeck? I think Balsamiq just runs in the browser unless it's Air? Okay, so it's an Air app as well. Anyone know of any other apps that just run within the UI web view on OS X? No. Okay, so again, there's a huge market there. Part of what I want to talk about is the fact that your skills can actually allow you to tackle that market without needing to know Objective-C or Cocoa or any of these other things. Okay, so why web technologies though? Why not just learn Objective-C and all these things and Cocoa and build out using the native language for the actual platform, which is a good idea, by the way, especially if you're going to do game development or you need to be close to the hardware. But the thing is, I don't actually want to learn those things, ever. So there's the speed and cost of development. Oftentimes it's much easier to find other web developers than it may be to ramp up new hires on the platform-specific technology. There's a good chance you already know it, especially if you're part of this group. You have great tooling. We have great build tools and web tools and libraries and all the knowledge we've been building up from the web. And the web and desktop have been converging for a while. For instance, Microsoft's XAML technology uses declarative UI as well. And there are desktop application methodologies making their way into web stuff. And it turns out HTML and CSS are good enough for UI. They're not perfect, but they're good enough. So again, the traditional desktop development model includes Win32 API, MFC, AFC.NET. You've got Carbon for the old stuff, or Cocoa for the new stuff on Apple, and if you want cross-platform, you've got all that stuff up there. And there's also Adobe Air. I put an asterisk next to it because it kind of sucks on memory, and you also have to install a separate package manager, and it doesn't really exist within the normal framework of the OS, right? If you run any Air apps, you notice on your OS X, it doesn't actually fire off ground notifications, it fires off its own thing. It never really feels like it's part of your OS. Again, I don't actually want to learn any of these things, so I just want to do it in JavaScript, in HTML, and CSS. It's supposed to be a screenshot here. Okay, so what I was going to do today was I wanted to take an existing web app and turn that into a desktop app onto both OS X and Windows 8. And Adi Osmani, is that how you pronounce his name? Yes. Anyways, he has a great web app tutorial on how to build a single web page, web application. And he uses Backbone _ jQuery templating, and he uses Kyle Simpson's Lab.js, as well as Justin Diaz's cache provider. So I wanted to essentially take that example of a good single web page, and turn that into a desktop application. So let me get a show of hands. Who here is familiar with single app web page design? Okay. So for OS X, I actually just used MacGap. So MacGap was a port of PhoneGap Mac, which I don't know if anyone is familiar with that, but PhoneGap is a cross-platform framework in which you can target both, or you can target iOS, Android, and Windows Phone, and BlackBerry, and I believe even Symbian as well, using web technologies in similar ways to what I'm talking about here. This is a port to specifically target OS X. And now I'll jump into this little demo time. So, 1 second, guys. I'm going to tether real quick so I get internet. So while Addy's tutorial's loading up, I'll actually wait. Here it is. Sorry, guys. Okay, so here's an example of Addy's essential multi-level backbone gallery. This is his example. This is used the backbone underscore jQuery templates and lab.js as its loading tool. And at the end of this presentation, there'll be links to all the slides and stuff. And you can actually read this. It's great if you want to understand the basics of building a single-page application with jQuery's best friends from Alex Sexton here in town. So taking this same model, which you have, we go through, essentially have a collection of albums in which there are sub-albums attached to that collection, and then you can go through and actually buy one of these guys. It'll take you to the Amazon link. So I wanted to turn that into a desktop app. So in the Mac app example, I actually kept all of Addy's original code, including backbone.js underscore and jQuery templating. I got rid of the lab.js bootloader because whenever I'm developing a desktop application, I don't actually have to worry about the same things we do when we develop for the web. So because the user takes the hit of downloading all of these resources when they install the application, I don't need to worry about lazy loading techniques or conditional loading, etc. You actually can break a lot of rules that you've been following through optimization for a long time. If you don't want to, you don't really need to worry about concatenating your code or minifying it in order to reduce the packet sizes. I'm going to switch over real quick. So, okay. Can you guys see this?
No.
See if I can bump this up. I don't ever use Xcode. All right, so guys, here I literally just declare each of the scripts that I'm going to load here. From Addy's example, it actually works pretty much out of the box. The Mac app example I'm using here is literally just a UI web view inside a Cocoa application, very bare bones. You see that there's this public folder, and then you have the Mac app classes, etc., that will essentially fire up and give you very limited native bridges to a few certain things. Specifically file access, you get ground notification, you get some other things. This is still an open source project, so if you have skills in any of these languages and you want to contribute, please do. I don't think you don't quite have the same level of sophistication as you do with PhoneGap to all of the native APIs that you would expect here. For instance, there's not currently, it doesn't appear there's currently a way for me to access the webcam, and that's something that I would expect for one of these frameworks. I'll actually list a few other examples of frameworks, open source projects that you can also develop on OS X for. But for this example, I use Mac app, and it works well for this one. Once I run this, you see that literally I have what is that single page application running within this Cocoa frame. And if I turn Wi-Fi off, you can see that this is all running locally. Everything works just fine. Like I said, I don't have access to a lot of things, but if I click run again, you should see that I have this ground notification that it's first time loading, as well as I have this arbitrary badge that I apply to the dock. So these are some of the kind of things you can do to integrate the experience within the OS. in such a way that the user would expect, right? So if there's events that need to be fired off that are either background tasks or you need to update the badges on the docs, you can do all of these things with these frameworks. And it's actually pretty simple. So in Mac app, also in Phone app, they provide an object called Mac app. And here you can see we have a Mac app.route notification. I passed them an object for the title and then the content. And very simple stuff. Same thing with the update badge. I can literally do macapp.doc.badge equals count. There's other APIs such as the application sleep state, what to do when it awakes, things like that. Okay, next I'm going to look at the Windows 8 Metro port. So for this one, it's going to look a little bit different from the actual web app, which was here. In that I wanted to turn it more Metro to fit the look and feel of the new Windows 8 Marketplace apps. So the tools I used in this example, I still used Addy's JSON data, and I used the basic Metro split template, and then WinJS API for everything else. I didn't have to do that. If you prefer your own library, go ahead and use it. Mix and match works really well. You do need to understand some of the context of the WinRT and sandboxing model. You also need to understand some of the limitations of your library. For example, the jQuery XHR checks for cross-domain first. It does it in such a way that you need to either disable the cores, C-O-R-S, or you need to use the WinJS XHR for your AJAX calls. So here's an example of the WinJS port of the same web app. A little bit different. Again, like I said, we're using the same data. And to go ahead and take advantage of some of the things that the Windows 8 API provides, I went and implemented, for instance, sharing. So Windows 8 has a thing we call contracts, which allow you to essentially share data to any other application that will accept certain data. So in this case, all I did was define text that we're going to share, and any application that accepts text will appear. So if I wanted to tweet out this description with this, well, in this case, this is an image reference, but can't see it really on this slide, but so essentially the sharing contract, you have a source app, which in this case is my Metro gallery, and you package that data and say, hey, I have this data type that I want to share. It could be HTML, it could be text, it could be a URL, it could be email address, it could be an image, a binary, a file, etc. And then the target apps can say whether or not they want to accept that certain type of data. And so in this case, I literally say that I have this text I want to share, and obviously email and Twitter and Facebook if I have it installed. All of those things would accept that data package. The real luxury of this is that I don't have to implement these features myself. I don't have to implement OAuth for Twitter. I don't have to implement email or have the SMBT server to melt these things. It's all handled. If the user has an app that works with it, it'll just work. Another thing you can do is you can take advantage of live tiles. Essentially the same thing as the badges within OS X, except there's some more information you can apply toward it. Here's an example text, and if I go to my Windows Start screen, we can see that, for instance, this WordPress app right here is actually a live tile. And that's showing data from the actual WordPress app. And that WordPress app is also an HTML JavaScript app. So there are a few things you have to consider, though, within desktop app development. You always have to consider state. At any point, if the application is not the active application, it's going to be put into memory. If the OS needs to get that memory back, it's going to shut down the application. It's going to give the application notice, usually 5 seconds. You can request a little bit longer a lot of times, but essentially you need to do whatever you need to do and shut down. And so to do that, you need to be able to save state and then restore that state on reactivation. Within Windows 8, you can do that via the application data object. Within Mac app, you probably have to implement your own caching solution, use local storage, or maybe IndexedDB or something, and pull it back out on relaunch. More things. So another example of the share contract. Here I'm trying to share from a different application the ingredients list from a recipe. And one other thing I didn't actually have example code for the Metro Gallery app that I ported was the ability to search. I mentioned this in the beginning slides. Within both Spotlight and within Windows 8, you can obviously search within applications. So a lot of times at least passes your search query to another target application. An example of that would be so if I'm in this cookbook application, I search for time. So I can pass within the cookbook application the query that I'm actually searching for. That allows me to essentially again lean on OS, in such a way that I'm not having to implement all this myself. So I want you guys to go out and build a desktop app. There's a few examples, or a few ways you can do that. You've got the Windows 8 Metro SDK, you've got Mac app, which are the two examples I showed. And then you have a couple more. You have Tide SDK, which is formerly the Titanium Desktop Studio. Titanium is another cross-platform tool that you can actually use JavaScript, Ruby, or Python to write desktop apps. They target, the Titanium Studio as it exists now targets mobile, and apparently they spun off the desktop studio into an open source project. There's another one which I have not had a chance to actually play with called app.js, which looks promising. In a similar way, you can target multiple platforms and write an application that both targets Windows OS and Mac OS. So cool. Any questions?
So what is the upcoming change? Is this an official Microsoft call for additional OS X apps?
Is this an official
Microsoft call for OS X apps?
No.
Actually, I think that's more than any insight into Twitter statement of their policies about third-party apps.
No, the question was, do you have any insight into Twitter's policy regarding third-party apps? So for anyone who's not aware, Twitter has been making lots of changes to their kind of developer, I don't know if it's the actual developer agreement or not, but their kind of taking more control over what they claim is their experience and not wanting third-party apps to re-implement some things. And actually, I promised that I would show one thing, but an example of a really good, well, the only, I guess, world top-class HTML JavaScript app on OS X right now is TweetDeck, which I live in practically. So this is actually all done using. So TweetDeck's actually all built in HTML and JavaScript. So well, this is fired up. So Justin's question was, do I have any insight into it? I don't. But essentially, they're kind of reclaiming control of their brand, and they're not wanting third-party developers to re-implement some things. So in other words, I actually have two applications right here on my, you can't see now, two applications on my Windows 8 start screen that are Twitter apps. If you read between the lines of the way that Twitter is going, it may be that these applications are re-implementing features that Twitter themselves want to control.
So, and the last question would be that recipe app you just had up. That looks amazing.
It's an example app. It's called Contoso. Huh? No, it won't be shipped. I mean, you can actually grab it now. It's out there. It's filled with sample data. You can grab it in C#, XAML, JavaScript, etc. So this is Twitter, and this is all done in HTML5 JavaScript. The way I can tell that is if I literally go to applications, and I expect this to prompt a question. So here we've got all of the code for the TweetDeck application. Any questions from that? I actually don't know what they're using. They actually may have just fired up a custom Xcode project and just embedded the UI web view and then just use that. Is it easier to get users to adopt a desktop app?
Yeah, or depending on the application, it could be a better experience.
Well, it depends on the application, I guess. So that goes back to the reach, right? TweetDeck is an application that I can also run within a browser. That being said, I don't know personally if I would visit it as much in the browser as I do with it actually being an installed app on my machine. I speak from personal experience there. I don't know if other users would be the same way, but a lot of times, installed apps are stuff you go back, you keep going back to. I don't know if there was a recent stat that came out on Facebook. 55% of Facebook users interact with it via mobile. I doubt that number would be so high if you could only interact with via in.facebook.com or touch.facebook.com. The fact that you had an installed app on your device probably leads to greater engagement.
I had a question on the Windows side of things. You showed it. It doesn't have any Chrome or anything like that. So is that part of the Windows 8?
Yeah. So all of the Windows 8 runtime stuff runs in full screen mode. Essentially, you have the IE10 engine running it, the sandbox, and anything you have in IE10 you have in the Windows 8 Metro RT. Let's see.
You gotta switch it.
It's just like a platform.
You can also run this within a VM if you're going to be doing presentations like this. So again, this is the WordPress app. Everything does run in full screen. I didn't really go into a lot of this, but I actually just wanted to talk about getting people to develop desktop applications rather than some of the specific things. But in this example, all of the controls and all of the UI is hidden away, provided by the OS in other ways. So it's meant to be content first and fully immersive. If you're focusing on other OSs, obviously, design for that OS and how users are expected to engage with it. Design interval. Can't answer that. Right. So she was saying that she actually uses Hootsuite over TweetDeck because. Right, because you can migrate to various machines and you have the same experience. That's definitely a valid reason for using something like Hootsuite. The one thing with something like the TweetDeck, so if I were to go here, I think they're actually a really good example on OS X actually, but never mind. If I were to show you a TweetDeck, if I were to go to web.tweetdeck.com within Chrome and show it up there, you would see the exact same experience as you do in the full screen installed app. So there's pretty much complete parity there. For a while, there were a few features we didn't have implemented within the actual installed app, but those have caught up and they seem to be in complete parity now. So that's the question I was expecting. So right now there's no. He was asking if the app just submits as a package that you can explode like I did with TweetDeck, how does he keep the damn kids out of the source code? And that's the question I was expecting whenever I showed how to use the source on the other. So. Ultimately, you can go back to the old hacks of obfuscating your code. Still minify it, not for performance reasons, but just to make it more difficult for people to jump through. Right now, with the release preview, it does the same thing that I did with TweetDeck, where it actually explode the package and see what's going on there. If you have administrative privileges and you jump through some hoops. At this point, I don't know what the ultimate answer will be to that, because obviously these are interpreted languages. They're going to ship with the app in some way, but it's just a matter of how difficult you make it. That being said, it's not a binary, so this isn't the type of thing you're going to. If it's super mission critical code, maybe hide it some other way. With the specifically with the Windows 8 stuff, you can also actually use C# classes. So there may be something you wanted to hide in there that is, you have your super hard business logic over here that you don't want anyone to see, and you do all your declarative UI and all your behavior and all your styling within languages that are more comfortable with changing often. No, so within the Metro experience, you can't run any plugins. The question was, does Windows 8 allow for Flash and Java applets and these things? Not within the Metro experience. Obviously, if I'm running Internet Explorer 10 here, I can install Flash or any of these things. So, for instance, Silverlight doesn't run even in the Windows 8, the Metro experience. More? So the question is, do I view the fact that the pinned web app experience is not as engaging as a installable? It's kind of a loaded question, but...
Well, especially the example of tweet deck, you said there, exact variant.
Right. Well, in my mind, the issue is more of a... so right now you can actually, if I were to pin an app from a Chrome, during the Chrome experience, those can run full screen without the little C Chrome, and you can have much of the same experience, right? The things I'm not going to get those, I'm not going to get the badge updates, I'm not going to get the go out notifications, I'm not going to get some of the lower OS things that they get from an actual desktop application. The other issue I see though is that users still have never kind of taken on, they've never picked up by and large on their ability to pin apps, right? So the browser is a browsing tool. They browse to something and they leave again. They don't take those down, right? Versus having something distributed through an app store, I think users kind of rock that more.
Is that really more of a, because Microsoft and Apple are motivated to make that way?
Yeah, so the question was because of the motivation or motive thing. Could be, personally I have no answer on that. If you allow for discovery in the app stores for pinned web apps, that could possibly help, but yeah, no answer for that. Anyone else?